Welcome, everyone. My name is Alejandro Rodriguez. I'm Executive Director of the Spirituality Network, and I am excited to host you for this session of Setting a Longer Table with a focus on inclusion. For those of you that are not familiar with the network, I wanted to share just a couple things before we dive into our conversation. First of all, I wanted to share our mission, which is grounded in the source of all creation. The Spirituality Network seeks to cultivate the awakened life through contemplative living and action. And our vision is awakening lives, transforming the world. We are very happy that we serve those with and without formal faith affiliations and those with and without the ability to pay. It's an important part of who we are as an organization and how we operate. And our topic for tonight around setting a longer table, we believe is really an important part of that awakening to make sure that we are awake to one another and how we can help create a more inclusive environment for everyone. We do host a number of different types of workshops and events at the Spirituality Network. Our focus this evening is part of our JEDI series, which is all about justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion. And today, as I mentioned before, is a focus on inclusion. Before we actually dive into our workshop, due to the contemplative nature of what we do, I wanted to invite us to hold just a couple moments of silence. So I want you to get comfortable, relax. You may want to close your eyes and invite some silence to enter in. And in a moment, I'm going to share a reading that will break the silence, and then I'll ask you to respond to the reading that I have. So just a couple moments of silence before I share that reading with you. I offer this reading and invite you to consider how it might touch you. Each human being, however small or weak, has something to bring to humanity. As we start to really get to know others, as we begin to listen to each other's stories, things begin to change. We begin the movement from exclusion to inclusion, from fear to trust, from closedness to openness, from judgment and prejudice to forgiveness and understanding. It is a movement of the heart. You may want to read that silently to yourself, and as you feel led, is there any phrase or anything in this that particularly speaks to you that you might want to call out? Go ahead, Jeff.
I'll just mention the phrases there. As we begin to listen to each other's stories, things begin to change, and um, it's just I find it interesting and fascinating to hear other people's experiences and backgrounds. And certainly as I have done that over time, um, you certainly learn why that person maybe acts the way they do or behaves in a certain manner. Um, and um, Sometimes that behavior, without understanding them, almost seems, I'll say, offensive or odd or something like that. But then once you talk to that person or listen to them and understand some of their background and their experiences, you at least I begin to understand maybe some of their behavior that didn't initially make sense to me, maybe.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's so as I hear you, Jeff, it sounds like what changes is something in you.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Nice. Thank you. What else?
The phrase from exclusion to inclusion, just those simple words, yet they're as different as night and day. I mean, it makes all the difference in the world to be part of something
Hmm.
and to not feel like you're alone.
Hmm. Thank you,
I
Jean.
mean, wow, it's very powerful.
Hmm.
And
It
I
changes perspective on everything.
Yeah. Yeah. Liz?
I think going along with that is from fear to trust. Because too often we see what people fear. They it is a short jump to misconception, to hatred, to violence.
Hmm.
And I would like to see us move from fear to trust.
Yeah. And I think, Liz, so often that fear is a fear of the unknown.
Yeah,
But then once we learn each other's stories, we're not unknown to each other anymore. So we don't have to fear.
it's all connected.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, these are all fruits of the spirit of inclusion.
Hmm. Yeah.
Wonderful.
And I love Alejandra that it's a movement of the heart, that how it closes on it being a movement of the heart. Um, a lot of what people experience that is exclusive is through being taught um, information that is errant information around others and people that are different than they are, but you don't come into the world with that kind of thinking. Our hearts are pure and our hearts are open. And over time, the mind gets involved and taught, and you're taught different things. But if you begin to really be more heart centered and really, really get into the aspect of the heart, which I believe someone mentioned, fruit of inclusion, but I also think about the fruit of the spirit, and for me, those are all heart centered.
Hmm.
And so for me, it's just, I love the movement of the heart because I think that the issues we're seeing is bad thinking, bad, it's just bad thinking, and that's not informed, and it's all fear based. And if we drop down into our hearts and really connect with each other, I think you move, as Liz said, from fear to trust.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I invite us to hold these things as we have our conversation this evening and kind of anchor our conversation to these thoughts. I love positioning this as fruits of the spirit and fruits of inclusion. I think that's a beautiful way to frame it.
Mhm.
I wanted to start by getting to know each other just a little bit. So if we could each share our name and then maybe share just briefly a time when we felt fully included. Doesn't have to be a long story, but anytime, take a moment to think about when were you in some kind of a situation where you felt fully included. So I'll kick us off. Again, I'm Alejandro, and I think for me, One of those times was when I was participating in our Well Streams program with the Spirituality Network, and I had an opportunity to share my story about myself. And I felt so embraced. I was able to be really authentic and open and share deeply of myself. And it was kind of scary to do that, but I felt so loved by the people that I was talking to that I knew that I was welcomed and accepted just as I was. I'll invite whoever wants to share to go next.
So
Maybe oh, excuse me, Liz, go ahead.
So mine is kind of recent. It was last night at book club, believe it or not. And a lot of times this book club I joined, everybody knew everybody else. I was kind of invited as a friend of a friend. So they had all worked together. So there have been times where they start talking about people I have no idea, situations, memories, that kind of stuff. But last night we got into discussions of good books that we liked. And I was able to kind of contribute, and I just felt part of the group. And I can't say that I've always felt that with this group. So it was really kind of nice for a change.
Thank you, Liz. Jean, you were going to share?
I was having difficulty thinking actually of a time that and I think that says a lot in itself, that I have felt included. I think I felt most included when I used to work with the Spirituality Network and women's groups in like shelters and marginalized women with marginalized women, and to be able to tell your story and to not be judged for it, and to be able to sit in the presence of others who have either similar experiences or have experienced similar pain. The similarity
Mm,
united us where we
yeah,
could speak to each other.
thank you.
My name is Jeff, and an instance that comes to mind of feeling fully included goes way back 50 years or so.
Mm,
And back to college days, really, where I was included with other folks, and they seemed just like me, which maybe isn't very diverse, but uh, after high school experiences and so forth of being more on the outside of things, it was sort of nice to be able to hang around and be with other people that took me as I was. And so.
thank you.
Hello, everyone. I'm Rhonda, and I think what I would share in terms of when I felt fully included is I've been intentional about really kind of shifting relationships into spaces where I do feel more authentic connection and inclusion. And so I have this friend circle, and and we were just catching up, and I was sharing about I have a new dog, and and I have very particular tastes, and things that I love and enjoy, and I realized how easily I was sharing all of my foibles and my preferences and all of that being easy. And I realized that I had really cultivated a community of friends in that moment, because I wasn't feeling the necessity to filter or to comport or to try to fit in. I actually was just being. And in that moment, I, really felt a deep sense of gratitude that I have been so intentional about really trying to curate relationships where I can be known as I am, and not ever, thinking a lot about what someone else wants me to be, that I was just in that moment being myself. And so I think that for me, that happened over the course of the pandemic, and that's what came to mind.
Thank you all. So I heard things like being able to contribute, uh, being authentic, being
Mhm.
free of judgment, uh, feeling like you were with an in-group of people when sometimes you had felt like you were not with an in-group. Uh, but I also heard that it takes a little bit of work to be in that group, and it takes some intentionality. Did anybody hear anything else? So we're going to explore what it means to be inclusive, but I do want to start by making sure that Rhonda gets to share a little bit more about herself. I've known Rhonda for a very long time. We
Yes.
work around nationwide, and Rhonda now currently serves as Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Associate Vice President at Nationwide. She is a beautiful person inside and out. Rhonda, what else before I know you're going to be sharing a little bit more, but what else about yourself would you like to share for the group to know about you?
What I would say is that what I want you to know is that for me, I think that the work that I get to do is to create, and to hold space for others, and and then also in the process of really becoming and settling into being my authentic self. Um, that it gives other people permission to do it. And so for me, it's like real seeks out the real, and really learning to settle into that more, because I didn't realize how much, even as I'm doing this work, realizing how much we're oftentimes operating through a filter for what others would want or what others would need. And so for me, it's really been important to, as I really want to honor the work I believe that I'm called to do through the work of inclusion, is to really be what I say. And so trying to do the work of really living an authentic life is a journey. It's not a destination, but I'm on that journey, and I'm trying to lean into that every single day. So I count it an honor that Alejandro connected with me to share with you and to sit in community with each of you. And so that's what I would share.
Thank you. I appreciate that, Rhonda. So I asked Rhonda to share a little bit of her thoughts on two things: why inclusion matters, and what happens when inclusion either doesn't work or when it's not done well. So Rhonda, I'll just leave space for you to share whatever is on your heart about these two things.
So what really came to me when it's like, why inclusion matters. For me, I feel like inclusion is a divine right. It's part of what I believe we need as humans, individually, but also collectively in community. And it's central to building communities that are dismantling stereotypes, prejudices, all of those things, because we want to work toward a more equitable and just world. And there's power in community, and you can't really sit in community if you don't have inclusion, because the energy that people will be using to cover and to hide and to comport will not be used to solve big problems. And it focuses us on the beauty. it focuses us too much on individualism and not on the beauty of the collective. And so for me, I inclusion matters because we need it to really optimize to our human potential individually and as communities. It's an imperative. It's not an option. It's a divine need and a divine right. When I think about what happens when it isn't done well, is you get what we're starting to see all around us: exclusion, marginalizing of the other. I think for me, I see a retraction of human decency and collective care, and you get people just thinking about themselves or their community, what they want, and missing the opportunity that can be created when we really think about community and how to honor one another. So at the high level, I think that's what I would say without getting respective and, getting too deeply into like workplaces, but as a community, just in every space, that's what I would say.
Yeah. So I had two reactions, and I'll invite the group to share their reactions too. But I love you framing inclusion as a divine right. I think we are called by our Creator to be
Mhm.
and that's so important. And then the second part about when it doesn't happen well, the word small popped in
Mhm.
my head as you were talking. I think we become small,
Yes,
smaller than we're called to be when we're not fully included.
because I think inclusion is, to your point, is big. I feel like that's where we find God, is in when we're in community with each other, and so for me, I think that is absolutely right. We get small, our communities get small, the world gets small.
Yeah. The rest of you, any reactions or thoughts or questions that you might have?
It's Rhonda, right?
Yes.
Yes, Rhonda, you mentioned that, well, for one thing, I want to start with, there's an expression, we are better together.
Mm-hmm.
And so you did elaborate on how we can't be that. We can't be our best without being together.
Yes.
It does matter. It and you mentioned that right now, the way we are in our country, well, you didn't say country, but the way we are is that many people are being excluded.
Mm-hmm.
And our culture lends into that with the mindset of, pull yourself up by your bootstraps, whatever that expression is. We're encouraged to be independent. And in that way, people think that they can go through life alone, and that's not the case. We are all connected to each other. And
Yes.
as such, what hurts one hurts everybody. And the inclusion is just really vital, because together we're a network, we're a support, and otherwise in this American culture, we stand to lose a
Yes.
lot.
Mm-hmm.
And together we're also a shield.
I'm sorry.
I was
Could you
just
say
saying,
that again?
and together we're also a shield.
Yes. Yeah. Right. Good. Yeah.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jean.
Yeah, I think Jean brings up a really good point. Something that I always kind of go back to, especially with it just recently being Holocaust Day and anniversaries of World War II, and thinking back to that, it's like at that time, the country came all together and they were willing to make sacrifices to make sure that things got done that needed to get done. And I don't know that, unfortunately, that we are in the same state. because it's, the mindset has switched from we are in this together to I'm in it for myself. And
Mhm.
we have
Mhm.
lost so much by switching to that. It's all about me and I'm going to get mine and to heck with you and you and you and you. And that I feel very sad. I really feel very sad for us as a country and for us as a people. And I see that in other countries in the world as well.
As I say all the time, it's like, to your point, it's like people are thinking about themselves individually and missing out on the collective. And there is no them. Too often there's conversations about, the other. It's just us. And I think that there's been that American individualism has always been a challenge and but what we're seeing today is an acceleration. And when you overlay the acceleration of technology, artificial intelligence, all of these other things. And then the pandemic and social media, it's gotten worse and more pervasive. So I think that we find, that safety and get those reminders in communities like these.
Yeah.
I'm going to say it a little different way. And sometimes when I can see other people and meet other people that are different from me, that know different things, that have different experiences, I sometimes look at it as how can I learn from them to make me better? And I know that's sort of, well, I'm just worried about me. That might sound like that, but if I don't interact with other people that are different from me or have different backgrounds or have different experiences, I can't grow myself or my I don't grow personally. And I know that it sounds like almost a contradiction in a way from how we've just been talking about that, but it's it's another way to look at it and why it's important to include others that aren't the same as me, because I can grow and hopefully they can grow as well from maybe learning some of my experiences that might be different from theirs.
But Jeff, in a way, you're really the only person you can control. So
Mhm.
you're the one that can control your own growth. We can invite other people to grow,
Well,
but it's
yeah.
totally up to them.
Yeah.
Thank you. So we're going to spend the bulk of the rest of our time reviewing a set of inclusion skills. And this is absolutely not an exhaustive list of everything that you would need to know. We just curated this list of things that would be important for us to think about in order to be inclusive and invite other people to a longer table. So we're going to cover each of these individually, and I would invite you anytime along the way, if you have a question or if you have a thought to contribute to a particular thing, let's go ahead and bring that into the conversation along the way. We don't have to wait until we're done covering all of these. So the first skill is one of curiosity, and I wanted to specifically put this one first because I think it's such an important mindset to have, to recognize that we don't know everything, and the more that we can be curious, the more we open ourselves up to new information and new knowledge. And I love this quote from Walt Disney that curiosity keeps leading us down new paths. If we don't have curiosity, we stay stuck and we limit ourselves from expanding and growing and considering other things that we just may not know about.
And curiosity too, what I love about it is, Alejandro, is actually a posture we can actively get into. So in times when I've experienced friction or or resistance, it's I've get into a posture of really getting curious and asking meaningful questions as my first I want to say emotion or process is to really get thoughtful and ask meaningful questions um, versus just reacting so that I'm actually in a position to respond versus react, and thinking about it as a posture, an actual mindset and behavior you can employ has really shifted some stress that I've, experienced in my work.
Yeah, and I think maybe the opposite of curiosity is making assumptions.
Yeah.
And we know what assumptions, what happens when we assume. Uh, but I love the spirit of asking really good questions.
Mm-hmm.
If you come from a place of curiosity, it it takes some of the judgment out of it because you're seeking to learn and to grow.
And I've
I
also
like,
found that, oh, I'm sorry.
go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say,
Okay.
Gina, sometimes how it also has getting curious is not, I'm finding that I'm not always asking questions in the moment of the other person or what around the situations. I'm also finding that I'm asking questions of myself, like, well, Rhonda, what are you reacting to? What is your assumption, to your point, Alejandro, about what's being said here or what you're, experiencing. So it doesn't always, involve curiosity, hasn't always yielded me asking questions of others. It's also helped me to be curious and to ask questions of myself.
I love it. Go
I
ahead, Jean.
see curiosity as a bridge, like with wood planks, when we meet people that we know we need to connect with, and we need to bring them in and not let them be outliers and outstanders, or we need to bring them in, or we risk there's certain risks involved in not allowing people to come in,
Yeah, yeah,
and so using the bridge of curiosity can help us to be inclusive of everybody,
yes.
bringing everybody into our hearts, finding the commonality in our paths,
Commonalities and what makes us different.
and beginning that we're one. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
And the thing that I like along with curiosity for me goes hand in hand is exploring.
Mm.
It's and whatever exploring entails, whether it's going out to events or traveling to a different country or trying a restaurant that has a different cuisine that you've ever had before, or going to the library and picking up a book and reading a book about something you've always been curious about. It's the curiosity to me leads to exploration, and the two really go hand in hand for me.
yeah, yeah,
And that exploration that you just cited in all those events, it I can tell it brings you joy.
Yeah.
They're joyful to
yeah.
discover something in somebody or in some book or in some place. I mean, that's joyful.
It
It is.
is.
It's so much fun.
Yeah.
And if
So
you can make a friend along the way, that just makes it that much better.
yeah,
We'll pull the whole world into our hearts eventually.
yeah. So the next skill is about knowing yourself and being authentic. And I love what you mentioned in the around curiosity, Rhonda, about knowing what is motivating you, being curious about what motivates you. And so again, this is another quote for us to consider. Um, a person who does not know himself cannot commit to another person. Without being genuine to yourself, you're unable to be genuine to anyone.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
I really come to appreciate that I can't love another person if I can't love myself. And
Yes.
I can't love myself if I don't know myself. So I have to be intentional and spend time really knowing who I am so I know how I fit into the rest of the world.
That absolutely, Alejandro. And one of the things that I was thinking about when you shared this with me was about my, deconstruction, journey. Is I for authenticity has been a journey for me, because all of my life growing up in my faith tradition, and just even in my professional career, is I haven't been as congruent, meaning that, who I, what my, who I am inside is not always what people encounter, outside. And bringing the real me forward in congruence, and not having a mask for this situation and this situation, and bringing that consistency um, it, across, and consistently, has been the journey, because I wasn't living in congruence, and trying to close that gap on that has been a huge part of my the deconstruction of my faith, and tapping into the divine in a way that allows me to really come forward as myself, and I believe more of who God intended.
You know, Rhonda, the more people I talk to, the more I recognize that just about everyone walks through life with a mask of some sort or another.
Mhm.
That we adjust to whatever context we're in,
Mhm.
and we behave how we think we're supposed to
Mhm.
behave in that situation. And in some cases, we are mostly congruent, and in some cases, we are not congruent at all.
At all. Mhm.
And it, and sometimes I wonder, do we even recognize when we're
Yes.
not being congruent, or are we just embracing the reality of that moment without really knowing ourselves?
Yes. And my goal has been, is I think when I'm at my most authentic, it allows me to be a thermostat and not a thermometer. I'm setting the tone for others in terms of their ability to really be their authentic self, versus coming into a room and, putting the thermometer in my mouth, trying to figure out what, what they want, or how I should comport, or how I should be. And it doesn't mean are not thoughtful and considerate, but it's really just really being consistent about who I am, and living that out loud and authentically has been the journey. So I feel more confident because I'm not trying to be something else. I just am.
Yeah. And it is a journey.
It
Uh,
is, God knows. It is.
Rhonda, could you speak more to the deconstruction that you were speaking of?
Well, what that has been for me, Gina, has been my father is a minister, kind of like the apostolic Pentecostal background. And
Mhm.
he was called into the ministry really, really young. So all of my life has been around a certain articulation and understanding of faith, of Christian faith, and that articulation would be exclude a lot of people
Mhm.
from being valuable, or being able to be authentic, to be whole, to be their true selves, and the way that
Mhm.
God made them. So for me, it's been a journey of why what do you really believe about God? What do you really believe? And understanding what I believe about God has helped me to understand that that's a reflection of what I believe about myself and other people, and really unpacking what I believe about the divine and my role in the world, and the role of faith in serving others, and helping me to be more of an expression of the divine. That's the deconstruction. And because there was a lot of exclusion and harmful ideology in the faith that I was given.
Thank you for sharing that, Rhonda.
Thank you.
Makes me think that when we are discovering our true self, that can be, in some cases, a painful or a challenging thing when you're reconciling who you've been with who you truly and so I don't think it necessarily has to be painful or challenging, but it can be, because they are so different. And trying to come to terms with that can be difficult, but it can also be done in an environment of non-judgment and unconditional love, where your authentic self is really embraced.
Yes. And finding that, and finding community where that will support you in that journey, versus, kind of sitting in the community where some of that harm occurs. You have to move into an environment where that can happen. A lot of it happened in isolation, and then I was able to find a beautiful community in relationships to really support me as I evolved. I don't think of it as a chrysalis, but that journey has been more of a, I would kind of almost describe it that way.
Yeah.
And there's some pain involved, because you do lose some of the community, but you find new.
Yeah.
Is there techniques for getting to know yourself better? Is there some simple ways that you have found? I mean, I guess we need to really be in a state of not meditation, but certainly of paying attention to our feelings as a reaction to things. But is there ways that we can be more authentic? How can we get to know ourselves better?
For me, and Alejandra, I'm sure you have tons of amazing, counsel here. Is, for me, one of the things that's I've always loved to write, but one of the so I've journal, and there's and you can find journal prompts or different things that you answer, answering a set of questions. And I also found these journals, and I might go, step away and then come back and share them with you at some point during our time together, Jean. These journals that focus on different aspects of things that I was focusing on at a time, so that you're not feeling so all over the place, but in a season being prayerful about whether I wanted to focus on more on hearing from God, and or a better understanding of my purpose, and getting to a place of really aligning with my purpose. But one of the things I would say is, so journaling has been really important to me, and tapping into that, something that I've loved since I was a child. But one of the things that I also found was important was trying to really make sure that I prayed or meditate regularly, because the voice in my head that gets in the way, or gets in the way, or is unkind to me, more so that it could ever be unkind to others. I had to learn how to quiet that. And meditation, it can teach you really how to quiet the negative voice, so you can really hear your true voice, not your ego, not the criticism, and really, I believe, tap into the divine voice of God that can lead and guide you through over the course of your life. So for me, those were two things. It's just more meditative practices, and journaling, and and grounding too, because I love to be outside and, connect with nature. Those are things that have really helped me a ton.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I would add retreats are a wonderful way to get to know yourself better. Spiritual direction is an important way to get to know yourself. Prayer, reading, exposing yourself to lots of other points of view and perspectives, and which is actually our next thing, opening up, by knowing what other people think and believe, I can hold that up and say, well, do I believe that or not? And holding those with, again, with curiosity and openness, but making sure that I'm not holding on to anything so tightly that I don't have room for anything else.
Mhm. Thank you.
Well, and I was thinking in conjunction with the last slide, you don't want to get stuck in an echo chamber.
Yeah.
That you want to be able to have yourself be open to other perspectives, other viewpoints, other beliefs, that kind of stuff, and be able to respect the person, even if you might disagree vehemently with where they stand on any particular item or issue or idea or whatever. But you've got to be willing to open yourself up to that, to those different viewpoints.
Yeah, I think it's
Right.
important, Liz, when you think, there are things I know about myself. There are things that I don't know about myself. There are things that you know about me. There are things you don't know about me. And sometimes you know things that I don't know about myself. So I think we have to be open to what other perspectives are, and listen to that and evaluate, is that life-giving for me or not?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it can
Listening.
be uncomfortable sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Knowing that, and maybe that's good, because I think we get complacent in our comfort zone.
Yeah.
And we don't ever, especially as we get older, we don't want to stray outside our comfort zone.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. So this is one of my favorite quotes from Audre Lorde. It's not our differences that divide us, it's our inability to recognize, accept, and celebrate those differences. I think so often we gravitate to people who are like us and only want to be with people who have similar characteristics.
Mm-hmm.
And that's safe, and it feels warm, it feels comfortable, but the world is not made up of only people that are like us. And we miss out on so much if we don't open ourselves up to different perspectives, and not just open it up, but really honor and appreciate that, oh gosh, Rhonda has a perspective that I don't have, and I can learn something from that, or it's beautiful because it's different than mine. So I think it's really important that we enter in not just with curiosity, but openness to embrace a different point of view or a different way of thinking.
Mhm.
And to your point, Liz, about what you were making about the world that we live in, we are very polarized. And
Mm-hmm.
the people that think differently than me have sincere, heartfelt beliefs that make sense to them.
Yeah.
Uh, and they are probably the right way for them to live their life. And I have to honor and celebrate that, even if it's not the way that I would live my life.
I've actually seen a meme that I thought was kind of appropriate, um, I'm sure you guys heard this as you were growing up. I certainly did, is the two main topics you never talk about when people get together is religion and politics. Just steer away from those two things. Well, we're reaping the consequences of
Mm-hmm.
that train of thought, because in doing that, we have lost the ability to have respectful, decent conversations while acknowledging each other's differences of opinion, still be open to our viewpoints, our individual viewpoints on politics and religion.
Yeah.
And I think that has contributed to a lot of the polarization in this country.
I'm enough of a radical that I want to have those conversations. Well, I'm going to keep us moving since we got several to talk to. So the next one is deep listening, which is obviously really important to aspect of what we do at the Spirituality Network and through spiritual direction, and an important part of learning each other's stories. And then back to that quote that we looked at earlier, listening is an attitude of the heart, a genuine desire to be with another, which both attracts and heals. And I imagine each of us have been in a situation where we've had the opportunity to share what's on our heart, and we may have been in experiencing a moment of pain, but when we share it with another person who listens deeply, there's healing that comes from that. And I think this is especially important when we think about people who are in marginalized communities who don't often get their stories told or listened to with the same respect and sincerity that people in power and authority will get their stories listened to.
I think it's very difficult to sit in the presence of people who are in pain and giving their story. If we have not processed our own pain, if we still don't know who we are, but it's so important to give people the opportunity to bring that forward out of them, and that gift, they're giving us a gift by speaking to us.
And to listen to
we just have to receive. And
Yeah.
listening is receiving.
Yeah. And not try and fix it.
Right.
Yes.
Not to tell them that things are going to be okay.
Right.
And not to tell them how it's going to be okay, but just listen to the story.
Listening, receiving the gift of who they are.
Yeah. Yeah. Liz, what did you say?
I said, but Alejandro, if you just do it my way, it'll be all right.
Based on what you know about me, Liz.
Yeah. And deep listening is not interrupting and allowing people, just the chance to be themselves.
Yeah. Yeah.
And what I wrote down, articulated and unarticulated, it's like listening with our ears, our minds, but also with our hearts, because emotional intelligence and deep listening, go together, because sometimes you can hear past the words. And so one of the things that I've really been thinking about just recently is really about making sure that I'm listening, just listening past the words at a deeper level, so that I can invoke curiosity and ask meaningful questions that can potentially create more connection and understanding and clarity. And then also, deep listening is an enabler of empathy as well.
Which happens to be our next skill, Rhonda. So I got into an interesting conversation with somebody who thought that only women had empathy, that men did not have
true.
empathy, and that empathy could not be learned, that you either had it or you didn't have it. And I wholeheartedly disagree. I believe empathy is a skill that we can embrace and learn and get better at. But it does require that I step away and embrace the other person wholly without bringing my own stuff into it.
So what's the payoff?
So what do you think the payoff is?
No, I asked first.
Well, I think the real payoff is connection.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Connection with yourself, right?
With self and the other
And
person.
others.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah,
Yeah.
right.
So,
What would you add?
oh, sorry, Alejandra.
Yeah, Jean, what would you add to that?
Oh, I'm just listening.
Okay. Okay.
Deep
Right.
listening though, okay?
Yeah. Deep listening.
So I wrote down what how I've processed what empathy is in the workplace, but I also think there's applicability broadly, is that it's a skill of connecting with others to identify and understand their thoughts, perspectives, and emotions, and then demonstrating that understanding with intention, care, and concern.
Mm.
It's you know, it's to identify and understand, and then to actually demonstrate that understanding with intentionality, care, and concern.
I love that. There's an element of two-way action going on there. There's the receiving, and then how do you play that back to the other person to demonstrate that you really understand their situation.
And I think I think it's easy to be overwhelmed sometimes.
Mhm.
And that we need to have healthy boundaries around that, in terms of allowing people to speak their piece, to say what they have to say, receiving that gift from them and responding, is very inclusive.
Mhm.
But we can't allow ourselves, we can't change the world, but we
Mhm.
can change, but we can listen to and look in the eyes of the next person we meet. If we do it to one person a day,
Yeah.
we're changing the world.
Yeah.
And one
Well,
thing I've thought about too. Oh, I'm sorry, Jeff.
no, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I thought it was Jeff. But is that we have different burdens. There are I think that empathy is what we've described, but there are times what I've noticed is that there are certain things that really, really tap on my heart, that really I know are activated for me to help to influence and to bring about change. So that, to your point, Gina, I don't feel that same flood for everything. I think that we have different burdens based on our individual composition and what I believe our purpose is in the earth. Because
Mhm.
and it allows, I think that approach also allows us to care for things more holistically. Because to your point, as an empath, it would be hard to get up out of bed in the morning if you didn't have boundaries, or if you had the same depth and well of care. I don't want to say care because that's not the right word I'm looking for, but if we were activated to try to change everything. I don't believe I can change everything, but I have a deep burden for, I believe, the things that I'm composed and equipped, divinely equipped to influence. And so I've tried to focus that energy into those areas that I have awareness around. And hopefully that
I,
makes sense to everyone.
I love the way you said that, Rhonda.
Yeah. Yeah. And maybe another way is I can feel very deeply, but I don't necessarily have to carry your burden.
Mm-hmm.
That's a choice I can make to carry it or not. Well, so building trust is another one, and this one is probably foundational to
Mm-hmm.
everything. It's the glue that holds all relationships together, and trust is based on integrity. So we have to be able to demonstrate that we are who we say we are and show up consistently as that person for another person to trust us. And I think it's important that we also recognize that some people build or uh, engaged in a trusting way with people right from the very beginning. And some people, you have to build that trust over time. and both are absolutely valid. There's the folks that probably more like me, that I will trust you from the outset until you give me a reason not to trust you. And then there are some who will not trust you until you give them a reason to trust you.
Yes.
Yeah. And so we have to recognize that people are everywhere on that spectrum, but it's still required for inclusion to happen.
And what I hear underneath that too, Alejandro, is that everyone wants to believe that they're trusted, but there are actual ways that attributes that and character that we develop, and to your point, show up with consistently, that build trust. Brene Brown has done this, work around the anatomy of trust. And she has this acronym called BRAVING, because to trust, you have to, dare greatly and be brave. And so the 7 elements of trust that she articulates is, Jean, you'll love this one, is boundaries. It's and it's an acronym around braving. So it starts with boundaries, reliability, accountability, that the vault, in terms of the integrity. If Alejandro shares something with me that I am integral about, making sure that I hold those confidences, that I operate with integrity, that I'm non-judgmental, and that I'm generous. And one of the things that she also said that has really been foundational for me, because again, in the beginning, I talked about how I'm learning to ask questions of myself, is that she talked about how, from a trusting perspective, if you can't offer help to someone or support to someone without judgment, then that means that you also can't receive it without judging yourself. And so building trust is just, I love the idea around consistency. People will trust people that show up with reliability and consistency. So I just wanted to share that BRAVING acronym, because it has been fundamental for me to really shift my understanding of trust as behaviors that we demonstrate and how we relate to each other.
Yeah, it is not as soft and fluffy.
Yeah.
There are actual things that we can do to build it.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. So the next one is probably my favorite, which is cultural competence. And what I love about this one is, for me, it implies an intention and a spirit of continuous learning, because we can never know enough about all the different peoples of this earth. But we need to be open to learning about other people as much as we possibly can. And this quote, I think, is just so wonderful. Every human is like all other humans, some other humans and no other human. So our ability to really get to know people is so important. And I love the shift from the golden rule of treating people as you would want to be treated, to the platinum rule, which is treating people as they would want to be treated. And you can't treat people how they want to be treated unless you know how they want to be treated. And that requires learning. It requires an openness. It requires curiosity, to be able to be competent enough to move from one context to another context, and to engage people in the way that they want to be engaged.
So what I included for cultural competence was: inclusive people are socially aware, intentional, and effective in cross-cultural interactions. And I really try to focus on cultural competence whenever I'm, connecting with people, any situation where I'm kicking off, whether that's in a meeting or in a group, and you're being introduced to someone for the first time, when you're collaborating with people who are different from you, and just when you want to encourage others to activate a deeper depth of inclusivity, is you can really pull on cultural competence. But at the end of the day, this one for me, it just requires strong intentionality where you are in this situation being others focused and not so focused on yourself.
Yeah. Like, one example is, what do you call someone who has dark skin and is from has ancestry in Africa? Are they Black? Are they African American? What label do you use? And what I've learned is the simple answer is ask them how they
Yes.
want to be identified,
Yes.
because there
Yes.
could be multiple ways that people want to be identified. I
Mhm.
prefer Latino to Hispanic. Will I be upset if you call me a Hispanic? No. Would I feel honored if you called me a Latino? Yes.
Mhm.
I have a quick story to tell you.
Yeah.
It brought me so much delight. Again, I have worked with marginalized populations, and I was trained in chaplaincy and to marginalized people. And I got to work a lot with about, I don't know, could it have been 20 years ago that we had the influx of refugees coming from Africa because of the civil wars there. And so I was in the homeless shelter working at the time. And so I really made it my business to understand. And also when I work with people, I try to learn their language. And so it was so wonderful learning about them and being able to interact with them, because they came in highly suspicious and angry and but so ultimately they gave me a name which was Iman, and Iman
Mhm.
means full of faith. So then as more people would come and go, go into their new homes, and or not new homes, of course, but through the homeless shelter, everybody knew me as Iman, and it was so joyful. It was just wonderful.
I love it.
I did too.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
So the next one is about taking action. So much of what we've been talking about is a mindset or a perspective or a point of view. But if we don't do something, we're not going to be creating an inclusive environment. We have to take everything that we learn, the the mindset that we bring forward, and actually put it into place, or nothing changes. So we got to make sure, even if we're not perfect, that we start somewhere and start putting practices in place to help others feel welcome and included.
Yeah, whether
They
it's,
will honor our effort.
Yeah, yeah,
yeah, whether it's taking that first step or reaching out to the people that show up. That I think that's one of the wonderful things that I have missed about the Newman Center where I used to go, because they would have people that would welcome you as you walked in the door. And if you were a regular, they purposely try to learn your name. But they would notice if you were new, they would reach out and say, good morning, and try to let them know that they were welcome. And I think that goes a long way on both parts. Both parties gotta have to take that first step towards each other.
one thing that I have found is easy. When we started doing diversity and inclusion work at Nationwide, we had a council of a very diverse group of people. And there was a sincere desire to want to get to know people who were different than us. And so we had a commitment in this group of about 25 to 30 people, that if we were curious about something and we didn't know how to ask the question, we would preface the question with, can I be ragged with you for a moment? And that was shorthand to say, I'm really curious. I don't want to offend you. I want to ask a question. Will you help me learn? Uh,
Mm.
and the person hearing the question could take it for what it's worth, not a boneheaded question or an awkward or something that was likely to cause offense. They heard it as a sincere desire to want to learn and to grow. And by prefacing it that way, it made it safe to ask just about anything.
Yeah.
Now, the last skill is recovery. Because even if we do our very best, we are going to mess up. We are going to say something that's offensive. We're going to say something that bothers somebody. We're going to just mess it up in some way. So we have to be able to recover from those situations. But when we stop expecting people to be perfect, you can like them for who they are. So we have to be able to learn. To say, I'm sorry. Can you forgive me? Can you offer grace? Can I offer grace in this situation so that we can start anew?
I love that. And you know what's funny, Alejandro? I next to this one, I put a note for me of self-care, which was interesting in terms of how you've positioned it. Is and one of the things that I know about inclusion is that it is a beautiful way to view the world, and how it can, cause you to see yourself in others, but it opens the aperture of our lives and our ability to influence and to be influenced and to be a part of something beautiful. But I also know that the intentionality that can be required, that is required, frankly, for living an inclusive life, it can be, you have to care for yourself so that you can show up consistently, show up in a way that honors yourself and honors other people and honors God. So for me, the recovery was about making sure, when you make a mistake that you acknowledge it, but also I've been more intentional about making sure that I care for myself in a way that allows me to make sure that I can be more of my best at more times than I am not.
Yeah, yeah. I love what you had shared earlier, Rhonda, about being a self-critic. That's myself too. And if we can be a little kinder with each other,
Yes.
we can, with ourselves, we can use that as a platform to grow.
And it's good practice for other people.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, exactly. So, like we said, this is not an exhaustive set of skills, but things that I think are important to know. So I want to give us an opportunity to think about how we might employ these skills. I've got a scenario I'll bring up, read it through, and then I'll come back to this list and ask us to think about how might we approach this scenario. So here's the scenario. Your cousin is coming to the family reunion. He is actively vocal about his support for a candidate you do not support. How do you make him feel welcome? Your cousin is coming
Is
to
there something else I can help with?
my watch is trying to help us. Your cousin is coming to the family reunion. He's actively vocal about his support for a candidate you do not support. How do you make him feel welcome? So, using these skills, how might we approach him?
Talk about everything but.
I was thinking the same thing, Jean.
Well, he's not going to let you not talk about it because he is actively vocal.
I guess the two things that come to me, or the three things, I guess, is curiosity, openness to other perspectives, and deep listening. approaching it with those three to begin with.
And what in particular about those do you think are important, Liz?
Well, finding out about why he likes the candidate that he likes, being open to, surprise, surprise, there might be something in there that it tells you more about your cousin than it does about the candidate, about what they're feeling, what they're missing. And it leaves you open to using that deep listening. You're able to see, oh, I understand how they're feeling now and why they're going with this particular candidate. Even though I think they're in my head, I think they're completely off the rocker because that person isn't going to give them what they think they're going to get.
Mhm. But you do find out what's important to them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And
What else?
sometimes deep listening is enough to diffuse a further situation, and having cultural competence by understanding what their background is and where they come from, but by listening to them. And I don't allow people to go around and circle back, with the same thing. I won't stand there for that, but a lot of times deep listening can
as you
build
said,
understanding and trust.
yeah, as you said that, the opposite of deep listening is to get into a debate
Yes.
then about the situation. And that's just going to perpetuate the conversation and keep it going and likely take you to a place where you are not going to make them feel welcome. But if you're listening deeply, you're not listening to debate or listening to respond. You're just listening to understand.
So I bring a part B to this scenario, Alejandro. So you do practice the deep listening. You're open to that person's perspective. You're curious. You're trying to find out. And it brings to me another word is respect and being respectful in any encounter that you have. You also have to remember at some point or know yourself well enough at some point that I've taken as much as I can take. I have deep listened as long as I can, and I can't deep listen anymore. I'm just done.
Yeah.
And knowing your boundary and being able to walk away. And I think that's part of it as well.
So how could we walk away in a respectful way without saying, I can't listen to you anymore? That's obviously not going to make them feel welcome. How could you walk away? How could you end the conversation in a way that still honors him and his perspective and acknowledges your own boundaries?
I think for me, it's mirroring back what he has shared with me to show that I have been listening and that I can understand where he's coming from. At least I think I can. And I can be thankful to him, be grateful to him for being willing to share where he's coming from. And kind of find a graceful way to segue to how's cousin Millie doing with her gout?
I think
For lack of a better way of doing it.
by affirming you've heard what he said,
Yeah.
like by stating something like, well, I hear what you have to say, but I know that we can agree to disagree. I know we can do that. And then take them by the neck and go tell them to go play ball with you. Let's
Yeah.
go play ball.
Yeah. Mirroring, I love what you said about mirroring, Liz. Doesn't necessarily mean I agree with him. I've heard you say you respect this candidate because of X, Y, and Z.
Yeah,
Thank you for sharing that. You've given me a lot to think about.
exactly.
You've won them. You've won them over.
Well, not necessarily, because I've tried that and it hasn't.
No, I didn't mean to your side. I just meant to your baseball team.
Yeah. So
And I think for me, I love that what you were sharing, Liz, but also Jane, is it's just sometimes it's like really trying to kind of pivot in the conversation and pivot to something where you can find some where you can find some common ground, and when you reach your maximum capacity, then I sometimes have to withdraw or move to a different part of the the house, or whatever the case, and to kind of get my either my temperature down, or just get more clear in my thoughts, and then come back and re-engage. So for me, it's been just being aware of myself, and also when I'm kind of getting full, if you will, and caring for myself in that self-care and knowing yourself piece, and shifting the conversation where I can, if I can, because you won't always be able to, and that's real.
And I don't see anything wrong with saying to your cousin, you've given me a lot to think about. I think I can't process anymore at this time.
Yes.
Let me spend some time with this. Can we talk about something else?
Mhm.
So be honest, that say, I've reached my limit.
Let's go get something to eat.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So I think that nearly all of those can come into play in this situation. So I invite you to think about those skills and think about where you might want to employ them in a place that might be most important for you to build a welcoming environment. So in terms of closing our time together, we did a little checking in, talking about where we felt inclusion. In a way of checking out, why don't we share something that stood out for you in our conversation this evening that you want to carry with you?
Well, I really appreciate everybody's submission about ways to get to know yourself. I really appreciated that.
Thank you, Jean.
And Jean, I appreciate it. And I wrote down that curiosity is a bridge. You were sharing, and that I love that just the simple, succinct, concise way you articulated that how curiosity can create a path to connection. So thank you for sharing that. And then I also wanted to share, I told you I would go find one of my journals, and I got backups in case the topic came up for me again. And this one was, this is just an example, it's called Wholeness. And it's broken down into sections around physical well-being, mental well-being, spiritual well-being, and it asks, and it has journal prompts, and it asks meaningful questions. And so I spent a lot of time in the evening, putting my cell phone away and just kind of sitting with some of those questions and building a path to try to get more alignment and congruence around my own personal wholeness. So that's kind of how I've used it.
Yeah. Jeff or Liz, what are your takeaways?
Thank you.
One of the things that stood out to me was the skill of empathy. I just think that's a very important thing. If you can, it seems to me it's a great way to relate to somebody else. If you can sort of maybe stand in their shoes for a little while and sort of see how they're viewing things, helping you to understand what they're thinking. So
A friend of mine is really fond of saying that in order for you to walk in someone else's shoes, you have to take your own shoes off first.
That's good. Good.
Liz, how about for you?
I think the cultural exploration,
Cultural competency?
yes, really spoke to me because I'm really drawn to that and have been drawn to that for a while and trying to learn more. But again, as you know, as we were talking, as an introvert, it's very hard for me to take that first step and trying to reach out and say, hey, I'd like to learn more. You know, whether it's, and by culture, I mean not necessarily whether you're Latino or if you're African American, but if you're LGBTQ or more transgender, whatever, having that curiosity and wanting to reach out and having that fear inside of you, again, of not being perfect and asking the wrong question and putting my foot in my mouth. So that really stood out to me.
Well, what stood out for me, Liz, and I think this may help you, is the sincere kindness and desire to want to be inclusive by everyone on this call. So I think that sincerity goes a long way to helping us recover when we suffer from foot and mouth disease. Well, I want to thank you all for being part of the conversation tonight. There are a couple of upcoming network events I want to make sure to highlight. We've got our benefit concert on June 28th at Linworth United Methodist Church. It will be a beautifully contemplative evening of music and poetry, and proceeds from the concert go to help beef up our scholarship fund so we could offer all of our programming regardless of ability to pay. We do have a silent directed retreat that's happening at the end of July, beginning of August. It'll be at the Pines in Fremont, Ohio. It is a wonderful way to get to know yourself and to spend a week in a very contemplative state. And we are also looking for candidates for our upcoming Well Streams Awakening cohort. So if you know of anyone that's interested in a spiritual awakening, go to our website and check out the information there. You all have been beautiful. I thank you for joining us this.
Thank you.
I wish you well and be blessed.
Thank you. Thank you, Rhonda.
thank you.
Thank you,
Rhonda.
Gina.
Thank you for
Jeff.
coming.
Alejandro, so good to spend time with you.
All right. Thank
God
you.
bless you, dear.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.